2:11 a.m. Eastern Europe, restricted military zone. The night was too quiet. No wind through the trees, no distant traffic, no background noise beyond the faint hum of power lines feeding a heavily fortified Russian military base hidden beyond the tree line. For the men moving through the darkness, silence wasn't comforting. It was a warning. 2 kilometers from the perimeter, 6 figures advanced slowly, spread wide, moving with the discipline of men who had done this many times before. U.S. Special Forces. No insignia, no unnecessary gear, no chatter. Their objective wasn't the base itself, it was something near it. 2:15 a.m., the target area. Satellite imagery had shown irregular activity in this sector for weeks. Power spikes, unregistered vehicle movement, encrypted transmissions that didn't match known Russian units. Whatever it was, it sat just outside the base's formal perimeter, far enough to deny, close enough to protect. That made it dangerous. 2:17 a.m., Russian base night operations center. Inside the base, monitors glowed softly. Perimeter sensors swept in steady cycles. Everything read normal, too normal. An officer frowned at one screen. "Repeat last sweep," he ordered. The technician complied. Still nothing. 02:19 a.m. First breach. A U.S. operator knelt beside a shallow mound of earth. Beneath it, a fiber optic junction node. Not Russian military standard, not civilian either. The team leader raised 2 fingers. Confirmed. This was the site. 2:20 a.m. Silent attack. The attack didn't begin with gunfire. It began with cut power. A shaped charge whispered instead of roared, severing buried cables without lighting the night sky. Nearby sensors blinked offline. For 10 seconds, the area went blind. That was all the team needed. 2:21 a.m. Russian sensors react. Inside the base, alarms didn't sound. Instead, systems quietly switched to redundancy. That alone triggered suspicion. "We've lost sector monitoring," a technician reported. Cause? Unknown. 2:22 a.m. Contact. As the team moved in, a shadow shifted near a prefab structure, a Russian sentry. Closer than expected, the decision was instant. A suppressed shot cracked softly. The sentry dropped without a sound, but the damage was done. His biometric monitor went offline. 2:23 a.m. Base alert level rises. A red indicator flashed in the command center. Guard down. Sector 4. The base commander stood. Lock it down. Floodlights powered up. Search radars spun faster. And somewhere in the forest, engines began to turn. 2:24 a.m. The unexpected discovery. Inside the structure, the U.S. team found equipment they weren't expecting. Not weapons. Servers, signal relays, data taps feeding directly into the base's internal network. This wasn't a listening post. It was an integration node. The team leader's voice dropped. "This is bigger than Intel suggested." 2:26 a.m. Russian Quick Reaction Force deploys. Armored vehicles rolled from hardened shelters. Infantry squads poured into pre-assigned routes. Thermal drones lifted into the air, scanning outward in expanding rings. The base had shifted from defense to hunt mode. 02:27 a.m. The attack becomes a fight. A drone's thermal camera caught movement. Not clear, but enough. A burst of Russian automatic fire tore through the trees, not aimed, but suppressive. Branches shattered. Leaves exploded into the air. The Americans moved fast. Too fast. 02:28 a.m. Return fire. The silence shattered. Controlled bursts. Disciplined. Precise. 2 Russian soldiers went down before they knew where the fire came from. This was no longer covert. This was combat. 2:30 a.m. Base on full alert. Sirens wailed across the compound. Anti-air systems activated. Outer gates sealed. The commander slammed his fist on the console. "This is an attack near our base. Treat it as hostile action." 2:31 a.m. Orders from above. A secure line lit up. Moscow. The voice on the other end was cold. "Confirm nationality. Highly trained, Western equipment," the commander replied. A pause. Then, "Do not allow them to reach the perimeter." 2:33 a.m. U.S. Team under pressure. The team leader checked his watch. Extraction window was collapsing. Russian forces were tightening the net, smartly, methodically. "We're burned," he said. "Grab what you can." Data drives were ripped free. Charges were armed. 2:34 a.m. Something goes wrong. As the team pulled back, the ground shook, not from explosives. From beneath, a deep mechanical vibration rippled through the soil. One operator froze. "You feel that?" The vibration intensified, then stopped. 2:35 a.m. New intelligence. Russian base systems began throwing errors. Power fluctuations, signal bleed, uncommanded system resets. The base commander stared at the screen. That facility, it wasn't just ours. 2:36 a.m. Cliffhanger. As U.S. operators fought their way toward extraction, Russian forces suddenly halted their pursuit. Orders came down, urgent and unexpected. Break contact. Fall back. At the same moment, the American team received a coded burst transmission. Short, urgent, abort. You were not the only ones operating there. The night wasn't just hostile, it was crowded. U.S. Special Forces attacked near a Russian base. They expected resistance. They expected escalation. What they didn't expect was the realization that both sides had just stumbled into something far larger than either of them controlled. 02:37 a.m. Forest perimeter, active combat zone. The order made no sense. On both sides, Russian infantry units, who moments earlier had been tightening a lethal cordon around the intruders, suddenly received a single-line command on their encrypted radios. Cease pursuit. Fall back to Phase Bravo positions. No explanation, no clarification, just urgency. Several squad leaders hesitated, only for a fraction of a second, but in disciplined forces, hesitation never turns into defiance. They pulled back. 2:38 a.m. U.S. team reaction. The American operators noticed the change immediately. The incoming fire stopped. The pressure evaporated. Thermal contacts that had been closing in suddenly reversed direction. The team leader raised his fist. Hold, something's off. His comms crackled again, this time from higher command. This site is not solely Russian. Repeat, not solely Russian. Immediate disengagement authorized. That explained the Russian withdrawal. It didn't explain what they had all just touched. 2:40 a.m. Russian base command, internal alarm. Inside the Russian base, the atmosphere had shifted from anger to concern. The commander stood over a systems console showing cascading anomalies, power systems rerouting on their own, data packets moving through nodes that shouldn't exist, access permissions overridden without authorization. That structure was never meant to be discovered, an intelligence officer said quietly. By us or by them? The commander asked. The officer didn't answer. 2:42 a.m. The facility activates. Deep beneath the forest floor, something woke up, not violently, methodically. Backup generators engaged. Shielded servers spun to life. Autonomous routines, long dormant, began executing contingency protocols. The underground node did not care about borders. It cared about exposure. 2:44 a.m. Extraction becomes secondary. The U.S. team began exfiltration, moving fast but no longer chased. Aerial extraction was still minutes away, but something else demanded attention. One operator tapped his tablet, eyes narrowing. We're seeing signal spikes everywhere, not just from the base, from satellites, from civilian infrastructure, from military networks on both sides of the border. This wasn't a listening post, it was a convergence point. 2:47 a.m. High-level panic, carefully hidden. At command levels far above the battlefield, analysts reached the same conclusion almost simultaneously. The hidden facility wasn't Russian-owned, nor American, nor NATO. It was a legacy system built decades earlier during a forgotten cooperative program that had never been fully dismantled. A system designed to observe everyone, and now it had been disturbed. 2:50 a.m. The real threat emerges. Signals intelligence units began reporting something disturbing. Encrypted bursts were no longer just outbound. They were responding. Somewhere, unknown, unacknowledged, another node was active, communicating, synchronizing. 2:52 a.m. Russian strategic decision. A secure call connected the base commander directly to senior leadership. The tone was no longer accusatory. It was urgent. We are authorizing joint containment, the voice said. Do not engage the American team. Priority is isolation of the underground system. The commander nodded slowly. This was unprecedented. 2:54 a.m. U.S. orders shift again. The American team leader received a final update. Extraction remains green. However, if you can disable anything safely, do it. If not, leave it intact. We need answers more than destruction. That was unusual. Special Forces missions rarely ended with curiosity. 2:56 a.m. Contact without combat. As the team moved toward the extraction zone, something surreal happened. They encountered Russian soldiers, up close, weapons lowered. No shouting, no aiming, just tense acknowledgement. One Russian officer spoke in accented English. "You touched something old," he said. "So did we." No one replied. They passed each other in silence. 2:59. a.m. Extraction under watchful eyes. The helicopters arrived without incident. No missiles, no radar locks, no pursuit. As the U.S. team lifted off, infrared sensors caught something else, lights flickering beneath the forest floor, moving, shifting, then going dark. 0303 a.m. Russian engineers move in. Russian engineering units sealed the access points within minutes. Concrete, steel, electromagnetic shielding. The goal wasn't to control the system, it was to freeze it. But even as they worked, data leaked, scraps of code, timestamps, identifiers, into monitoring stations worldwide. 0308 a.m. Global ripples. Within hours, unrelated systems experienced anomalies. Civilian satellites lost synchronization for seconds at a time. Military networks logged phantom pings. Financial data centers reported checksum mismatches. Nothing catastrophic, nothing obvious, but enough to worry the right people. 0315 a.m. Quiet diplomacy begins. Phones rang that hadn't rung in years. Not to accuse, to compare notes. Did you know about this? We thought you did. No one fully understood what had been built, only that it had outlived its creators. 0322 a.m. The hidden truth surfaces. Archived documents, long classified, long forgotten, were re-examined. Cold War era, joint research, experimental monitoring frameworks designed to prevent surprise nuclear war, systems that watched everything, so no one would have to strike blindly. They were never meant to remain active, but some systems don't shut down. They wait. 0330 a.m. The facility goes silent. Back at the site, sensors flatlined. No power draw, no emissions, no response. Either the system had been successfully isolated or it had moved on. Days later, official narratives. Publicly, the story was simple. Minor border incident, no exchange of fire, no escalation. Technically true, strategically misleading. Private debriefs, United States. The Special Forces team sat in a secure room, recounting every second. One analyst leaned back after hours of discussion. "You didn't trigger this," he said. "You revealed it." That distinction mattered. Private debriefs, Russia. Russian officers reached the same conclusion. The base commander stared at a frozen image of the underground node. "If this thing was watching us," he said, "who else was it watching?" No one answered. Strategic consequences, changes followed. Quiet but permanent. Border surveillance doctrines rewritten. Legacy infrastructure audits ordered worldwide. Special operations rules tightened around unknown legacy systems. The battlefield had expanded, downward, backward in time. U.S. Special Forces attacked near a Russian base. Both sides prepared for escalation. Instead, they uncovered a reminder that some of the most dangerous weapons aren't missiles or tanks, but systems built to see everything. Long after their purpose is forgotten, no war began that night, no victory was claimed, but something ancient, hidden, and powerful was forced back into the shadows, and both sides walked away knowing the same truth. Not every battlefield belongs to the present.